been in the news a lot over the last year.
Yes.
And it's always been in print.
Yeah.
It's always been in audio and radio.
Yeah.
But we as Richmond residents have really not gotten a really good story live. If you could tell the Richmond residents a little of your story and why you're here tonight.
Yes. The reason I'm here is I'm going to be going into our Strata Council meeting as an observer. Every Strata Council member could actually attend as an observer. We have the right to that. Almost a year ago, I was going to attend a council meeting with one of the Wellington Court residents. And when we informed the then president of the Strata Council that we wanted to attend as observers, the reply back was, you're welcome to come, but the meeting would be conducted entirely in Mandarin. So the other gentleman had sent an email back saying, that please reconsider because because neither myself or Andreas speaks Mandarin, and we wouldn't have a clue about what you're talking about. And several emails bounced back and forth till finally the other resident owner had said, you know what, I'm feeling really discriminated against, and I really wish you would reconsider. And then we finally got that last email from him saying, look, we have no intention of running running this meeting in English. So he decided not to come because he felt that his rights were being infringed upon. I came to the meeting. I went to the meeting because I thought, you know what, maybe they were just trying to say that it was going to be in Mandarin, just as a tactic to discourage us from showing up. So I went. I thought maybe they changed their minds once they saw me there, but I was beside myself when they actually they did it all in Mandarin, other than saying hello and at the end of the meeting they asked me if I had any questions, but what am I supposed to question? It's kind of like somebody telling you a very lengthy joke, and at the end of that, everybody's laughing around you. Well, where do you start saying, well, where's the punchline, right? But this isn't a joke. This was a very serious matter. I was deeply offended at that. This is Canada, right? So we have two official languages.
So then, after that, you went to the human rights?
Yeah. Well, we had actually opened up the forum the night before because if we were going to file a human rights tribunal claim, we wanted to know what it involved. So when we went to the website, in order to see what the forum does, you actually have to download it onto your computer. So we downloaded it and saved it, and read through it, and said, well, who knows? I said anything could change. Like I could get there, and they could probably change their mind and at least translate for me. I mean, but they didn't. There was a couple of the council members I didn't even get eye contact from. You could tell it almost seemed as if they were very uncomfortable that I was there. And so by the time I got home, parked the car, took my jacket off, grabbed the computer, talked to my wife. I said, what do you think we should do here? I said, I'm pardon the language, I said, I'm really pissed off. And she says, well, we got the form on our computer. Let's fill it out and submit it. And we'll see what happens. So
was it easy?
It was easy. It took because we had read through it the night before.
Yeah.
And we had it took about just over half an hour to fill it out, and we made a few minor glitches and mistakes as we filled it out. So within about 10 days, they sent it back to us and saying, I think you're missing this. I think you're missing this. Because it's actually a strata corporation, you have to put down the official name of the strata corporation, which is I think BCS 802, because it's a legal entity. So they want to know which legal entity that you're complaining against. And then we sent it off again, and I contacted them. I think sometime towards the when was it? Mid-February? No, beginning of February. I said, well, I haven't heard anything, and they said, well, you know what? There's a bit of a backlog, but the person who's working these cases, she does have a backlog, so you could probably expect to see it within 4 to 6 weeks, and then within I think like 3 weeks, by the end of February, we had actually received an email like right at 5 o'clock, just before closing time for them, and they said it's been accepted. So like we couldn't believe it that they actually accepted. So in other words, it's legit.
So where did the GoFundMe account come into effect?
Okay. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting, and this is what I think a lot of people in the media don't understand, is the Strata Corporation, right, or the Strata counselors, they have Strata Directors Insurance because they're volunteering, right? So they have Directors Insurance. So in other words, if they make some really, really bad mistakes, like refusing to repair something, and then somebody trips and falls and breaks their neck, that means that they're not going to be held liable, right, personally. So in other words, they have Directors Insurance, and so whenever there's a claim made on them, they get free legal, right? So
and so up to this date, how much have you raised?
Well, we've only raised, I think, $4,500.
And your
our goal was 30.
And what have you spent to date?
To date, just over $31,000. So I underestimated what we needed, right? So yeah.
And so, what kind of support have you got from the community?
A ton of moral support.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people who've heard of me are extremely supportive.
Mm-hmm.
But trying to find a lot more people to contribute. I think I'm even getting a lot of support in the Chinese community. However, the Chinese, I think they're very skeptical about contributing, because if anybody finds out that they contributed to my cause, they might lose face in their own community, as far as I have heard.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you plan on still staying at your place and seeing
absolutely.
this through?
Yeah, absolutely.
And have you had any phone calls from our local politicians, like the mayor of Richmond, Malcolm Brody, or any of the other people?
No, as a matter of fact, anytime even the media has tried to contact Malcolm Brody, he's always been able to dodge the media. Well, I think he's seen me. I think he knows who I am.
Yeah.
And there was this farm market they had at Kwantlen at the beginning of the summer, and he kind of looked at me, and I think my wife was kind of trying to egg me on that I should approach him and talk to him, but I don't know if he wants to be seen in public with me. So.
So what about any of the other city councilors? Have they ever phoned in, or have you ever phoned them, or?
No, but I was at City Hall. When one of the Strata Council members was running an illegal fruit distribution business, and just adding huge amounts of extra traffic into our complex. And
so what about, we've got your MLA, which is Linda Reid.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going with the?
It's going well, and she's been very supportive. And for the last two meetings that I've had with her, she was very supportive in actually trying to organize and chair a meeting between myself and the housing minister, Mr. Rich Coleman. I had contacted him not once but twice, and I also CC'd the justice minister. Within about 2-3 days, I got a reply from the justice minister stating clearly that they can't get involved in this because there's an active human rights tribunal case, so there would be in conflict of interest. But I never asked them to intervene. I had asked them that once the case was closed, whether we win or lose, we need official language legislation. And then, so after my last meeting with Linda Reid, which was I think about 2 weeks ago on Monday, was it? Or no, it was shortly after our AGM, so it would have been midweek in September. And so she was still going to try a meeting with Rich Coleman and seeing if he'll talk to me. And then just last Wednesday, there was a publication in the Richmond News from Mr. Coleman saying, you know what, he's not going to be making any amendments to the Strata Act, because as far as he knows, this is only one case where proxy votes and official language was an issue. But just like when people write their MLAs, for every one voice, they're probably voicing the voice for about hundreds of people.
Have you tried any of the other MLAs in Richmond?
No, not in Richmond. I've contacted David Ebby's office in Vancouver, but of course, you get the automatic reply that he's interested in what we have to say, but he has to look after his constituents first, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And what about your MP?
MP, yes, Mr. Joe Pesca-Salido, twice. And the first meeting, I think with the MPs and with politicians as a whole, you have to come completely prepared on knowing what their jurisdiction is and what you need to ask them. And my very first meeting with him, it was my first meeting with a politician. I really didn't know what to ask him. So I mean, his answer was very vague to me, saying, you know what, we're a bilingual country in Canada, and we will support you in that. He said Canada is also multicultural, and the only thing profound that he said then is he said, we're multicultural, and the language that binds us all together is English. And you know what? He's right. But I had another meeting with him last week, Thursday. I thought it was very positive because a friend of mine who's a civil servant in Ottawa, who is a lawyer, when I met him really briefly last summer when he heard about my case, he had told me that that what's going on right now is unconstitutional. So as soon as I had mentioned that to Mr. Pescasolido, the lights went on, and he says, bingo. He says, that's federal jurisdiction. I can help you with that. So we'll see where it goes from there. He was suggesting there's some advocacy institutions in Alberta that might be interested in taking that on, and he'd also indicated that there might be some funding that was freed up by the Liberal government that the Conservatives took away. So
Andreas, in closing, how hard has this been on for you personally, you and your family?
Very difficult.
And do you feel that it could have been handled differently?
Absolutely, yeah. I the only one thing I could say about the former president was within a month of all of this happening, he not only resigned as president, he resigned from council. I believe they all should have followed in his footsteps. Then we would have known that you know what, that they were completely apologetic. We would have known that just in the spirit of what's being done. You know what? Let's resign. Our names are all caught in scandal here. Our complex is caught in scandal. You know what? We got to work this out. But the problem is, anytime we've ever tried conversing with them, they say one thing and do the other, right? So they say they want to be multicultural, but yet all the people that are going in that meeting are all ethnic Chinese. They all speak Mandarin. So if they truly want to be multicultural, and we have 30% of the people in our complex that are not Mandarin speaking, guess what? We should have 30% of people in that council, in that room today, that speak English.
So what is your intention tonight? Tell us what.
I'm just going in there as an observer, and
are you going to be able to understand the meeting?
If it's done in Chinese, no. They said that one of the owners or one of the council members is going to translate for me, but I don't know how good that translation is going to be. So I'm going to pull out the Charter of Rights from the Constitution of Canada, and it starts in section 16, where it describes official languages, but basically that's referring to government. And then when you go into the further section, it describes on how every child in Canada has the right to be educated in any one of the official languages. But then later on there's a general section, and on the section 24, it's actually the enforcement section. Okay, and the enforcement of guaranteed rights and freedoms, and this is covered under the general section. Section 24, anyone whose rights or freedoms as guaranteed by this charter have been infringed or denied may apply to a court of competent jurisdiction to obtain such a remedy as the court considers appropriate and just in the circumstances. Right? So I'm going to give them all a copy of this and point out where to find it. And then I'm going to ask them politely, because I'm not going in there to quote entrap them. I heard that Justine Ray was saying that about me. That's not what I'm about. I'm going out there to let them know that this is the law, and if they choose to do what they're doing, then they are actually infringing upon my rights as a Canadian.
So in all of this activism, have you ever felt threatened?
Yes. Yeah, we've had 2 cases of harassment. One of them who claimed to be a friend of one of the Strata councillors. I believe she was a customer of one of the Strata councillors, because the Strata councillor was running an illegal business, and the city had told me, take some pictures, take some video of the vehicles. So I was taking pictures of every vehicle that stopped off at her garage and drove by mine. I wasn't interested in the license plates or anything. I just wanted to show that, hey, this isn't the same vehicle pulling around all the time. I wanted to prove to the councillor, like, this is how many vehicles we got driving by on a pickup and delivery night. And one of the people took exception to that. And then after I took the picture, sat down, started eating dinner with my family. She rang the doorbell, started yelling at me, told me her bit, and I told her, look, you know what? Okay, it's all fine and dandy. You've said your piece. Now you can go. and she still kept on persisting, yelling, and raising her voice, and wouldn't leave. Scared the hell out of my kids. It really upset my wife. And I told her, I said, you know what, if you don't leave right now, I said, I'm calling the police. So my wife came down, slammed the door, called the police. We had the police there for a harassment complaint. And then just recently, after the AGM, somebody had put some defamatory stuff on our GoFundMe site. And I left it on for the day because I wanted people to see exactly what we're going through. And so they made several attempts after we took it down several times. And, my wife had told me it hurts her too. She says, this is you they're talking about. You're the man I married. And it hurts me to see this stuff. So then we shut it down so that he couldn't post anymore. And then every other media outlet that I've spoken to, he puts the same stuff there. He actually admits to saying that he's been putting that stuff on, and then we keep on taking it off, so he puts it on again. So in other words, that is harassment, borderline.
So he has put it on other people's sites as well.
Yeah, and then what happened was he managed to get our GoFundMe site shut down. So he must have written GoFundMe saying, hey, this guy's a crook, this guy's a racist, all that sort of stuff, which I'm not. And then we found out our email got hacked. I had to leave work early, and I had to go to the police again, fill out another harassment report for cyber harassment, right? So, yeah. So, yeah, I do feel threatened at times, right?
That's most unfortunate.
Yeah, it is, and it's completely unnecessary, right? So, but the thing is, when we go into the community, anybody that knows me knows that that's not me, right? They know I'm a warm, caring person, and I try to be a really good father to my kids. This has consumed a lot of my time though. So I have a lot less time for my kids. So they're robbing me of time of that.
Which you didn't expect, right?
I didn't expect that.
You didn't expect any of it, I'm sure.
But I mean, here's the thing, right? So this is the reason why we have the Charter of Rights. It's to protect us from stuff like this, right? So when I bought my place, just like a lot of these people, and this is the second time I bought a place. I had a condo on Buswell, right? So I bought that one when in 1990. That's when all the paperwork had dried on that one. But when you buy a condo or a strata, you do all the legal mumbo jumbo, and then what you do is you have to read through all the strata bylaws, so that you know that you understand what your position is, how to be courteous to your neighbors, what your expectation is to have a peaceful community, and so on and so forth. And then you sign the legal form saying you're signing off that you understand that you will abide by the bylaws, right? It's all done in English. So I did that here too. I did that when I bought my townhouse. We bought it brand new, right? So nowhere, with all that documentation, did I see anything that said that, oh, by the way, the language is subject to change within the next 15 years. Nowhere. Where are my rights in that? It angers me. We had seen stuff like this happen in other complexes on our street, but it wasn't the language wasn't the issue. It was control. Right, and what we were told by our property manager at that time, because we'd seen like one was on a 2-year plan, so they overthrew the council by way of one person going and telling lies and collecting a bunch of proxy votes, but then they realized how much work it was going to be running a strata. So what happened was they gave up the next year, and then other people got in, right? And there's still a lot of fighting happening, but it's not over language. So what happened in our case? There were some people. Well, one person in particular. I'm going to call him Mr. Proxy because I don't want to use his real name. We can use his real name if the tribunal finds proof that they are discriminating against me. Then we can use his real name, right? But Mr. Proxy was very good friends with somebody in another complex called Barrington Walk, which is about twice the size of our complex. It's a very beautiful complex, and they banded together. And they started talking, saying, hey, you know what? Let's fire the property manager, right? And so what happened was they managed to do that in hours, right? With Mr. Proxy collecting 80% of the vote, one man, 80% of the vote. And so they were gonna use us as a guinea pigs. And then as soon as we had done it and got a new property manager, and I don't know if doing everything in Mandarin was part of it as well, they were going to do it as well. But then a snag came into play. Mr. Andreas Kargut fills out a human rights tribunal complaint. Trouble's brewing. They're not going to do it. They backed off. guess what? Mr. Proxy and that other person are no longer friends, right? So there's a lot of stuff happening. So I think they're all banding together, and they're all trying to do this. We are an experiment, Wellington Court. They're trying to build, I think they're trying to build a monocultural community, right? Because as I was saying earlier, if it was all multicultural, then why are there 7 people, all Mandarin speaking, on the Strata Council instead of maybe having 30% of people that are non-Mandarin speaking? And that wouldn't bother me if it was a Caucasian, if it was a Hong Kong Chinese, if it was somebody from Poland. It doesn't bother me, right? It doesn't bother me if I'm there or not, because by having 7 people that are Mandarin speaking, guess what? I have no representation, and if I have no representation, I have no rights.
I guess if you don't want me to ask one final question.
Sure.
If you get to plan a policy according to your observation,
Yes.
your experience,
Yes.
what kind of policy do you think maybe which level of government you think will help us prevent or ensure our future cooperation in regard to language for strata and ensuring that we actually learn to respect each other instead of creating divisions within the strata council?
That's very good. I like that because that's what having a common language is. It's respect for one another. It's when people immigrate to Canada like my parents did, right? And like my wife did. My wife's an immigrant, right? So she came to Canada, and she did her best to learn the language, and that way, when she goes shopping or when she makes new friends or when she gets a new job, she's the communication is never an issue. She's always able to communicate with them, right? So that's why we have official languages, so stuff like this doesn't happen, right? So what I would suggest, it has to happen at every level. Mr. Brody has to smarten up, and Mr. Coleman, Mr. Rich Coleman, who is the Minister of Housing. What does the Minister of Housing mean? The Minister of Housing means that you're going to take ownership of issues dealing with housing. He's done neither. He's not taking ownership of the problems that we're presenting to him. He needs to take ownership of that. He needs to wake up. Is my opinion about that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So one more question: Is all your meetings done at this facility?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's actually a good facility.
Even when you were on council, you had them.
No. When I was on council, what we had was because Barrington Walk was also with the same property manager that we were, called First Service, and they were all built around the same time. It was built like a year after ours. We actually had it in their clubhouse, and I think it was a very small fee. It was just a cleaning fee that we had to pay. That's where the AGMs were held, and all of the Strata meetings were actually met at most of them were done in Jim Chung's place. He was the Strata president for about 9 years, right? Possibly 10. 9 years. Yeah.
So what time does your meeting start tonight?
At 7 o'clock. What time is it, by the way? It'll start in 12 minutes. Yeah.
Successful in changing property management companies.
They
wanted to do that.
yeah, they
Not first one.
well, what happened was, like I said, he Mr. Proxy went around to all the Mandarin speaking owners, and I mean it's only rumors what they were saying, but from what I'm hearing from this Justine Ray character is that that we never allowed anything but English, and what was the other thing, that I hate Chinese people. I don't hate anybody, right?
So
I want to go on record to say that, you know what, I have nothing against Chinese people. I have nothing against China. I have nothing against the people in there. But I do have, what I have against is when they're infringing upon my rights.
So, what does it feel like when people pull a race card on you and they say you're a racist? How does that make you feel?
It's very hurtful.
And you had said once before when you came here,
Yeah.
you were made fun of, and now you're being made fun of again. Can you tell other people what it feels like?
Well, it really makes you stop and think. Like, what's going on here? Like, how did it get to this? Like, who told them this nonsense, right? And so from what I hear is that somebody went around saying, okay, regardless of what was said, but they were saying negative things about myself and my colleagues that were on council. They said we were crooks, we were stealing money, that we would not allow anything but English. Well, the funny thing is we'd always had Mandarin-speaking people that were bilingual on our council. If they were so concerned about being able to understand the meetings, they had their email addresses, from the Strata Council members, all of us. They also had their telephone numbers. They could have just picked up the phone or emailed them saying, hey, you know what? A lot of us are Mandarin speaking here at Wellington Court, and we think it would be a really great idea if let's start at the AGM, getting a certified translator there so that we can get more out of the meeting, so we can understand what's going on. Guess what? We would have been pleased to do so. We never got that opportunity, right? Because all these falsehoods were being told about us, making us out to be the bad guy, angering the owners, right? Angering the owners. Why do you think they had security guards at the AGM? 2 security guards. The owners were angry. Who were they angry at? Supposedly they're angry at me. Perhaps those security guards are there for my safety, right?
Do you think that we have done a good job on promoting English in Richmond?
No, we've done a terrible job.
So who's responsible? Like, how can we make things better?
That would be Mr. Mayor's job, but I don't think he has the guts to do it.
Okay. So Success has tons of money
Yep.
that they get from the government to
Yep.
promote integration into the community.
Yes.
So why are we experiencing now translators? Why?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. That's a very complicated question.